Like many gunsmiths before him, Wallace Gusler begins a rifle at the forge. Here he will heat and hammer a bar of solid wrought iron into a flat scalp, heavy at one end, tapering slightly in both width and thickness to the other. On the swage block, Mr. Gusler prepares to fold the scalp lengthwise. The edges will then be welded together to form the beginning of the barrel.
I judge the heat strictly by eyesight and hearing. You can hear the hissing of the metal when it's at the fusing point. At the right temperature, you also get a lot of white sparks flying from the iron. The purpose of the steel rod, the mandrel, is to keep the bore from collapsing as you hammer. Flux is used for the welding. This is made of borax, iron filings, and sand. The flux melts over the surface of the iron and keeps scale from forming. The iron will not weld through scale. Once the barrel is heated to the fusing point, you only have a few seconds to hammer. The hammer blows need to be fast and moderate in weight. The metal is very hot, and if you hit it too hard, you'll hammer it too thin. By taking the barrel back to the forge quickly, you don't lose much heat. You start welding the barrel in the middle and work toward the ends. It takes many welding heats for each little section to get the iron consolidated at the seam. It will take several hundred welding heats to finish the barrel. Rifle barrels are formed in an octagon. The octagon doesn't have any practical use, it's just style.
The forged tube is just the beginning of a barrel. Mr. Gusler has yet to perform many cutting operations on it. To soften the iron, he heats it to a dull red all over and then buries it in the cinders so it will cool slowly. This is called annealing. The perfect gun barrel is a smooth, straight tube. It should be nicely finished on the outside, have an even wall thickness, and be as polished as possible on the inside. The objective of the boring operation is to produce a straight, smooth hole of the proper size. The boring operation itself is quite simple. The barrel is mounted in a sliding carriage. It is lined up with a chuck and held in place with wooden wedges. Then a long bit is attached to the chuck. The bit is oiled with linseed oil. In operation, the bit is turned by a heavy crank, the weight to provide momentum and smooth the turning, and the barrel is pushed into the bit.
The first boring bit does not cut from end to end. It just hits the high spots in the barrel here and there, so I push this through by hand. Each new bit is a little larger in diameter and longer in cutting surface than the one before. We use about 12 to 15 rough bits. Once we get a bit cutting the whole length of the barrel, we drive it with the chain and weight. The gravity feed is ideal for this type of work because it will slow up at the hard spots. If the barrel advanced at a constant speed, it would break a lot of bits. I don't believe I've ever bored a barrel, though, that I didn't break at least one bit, sometimes two or three. First thing you do to repair a bit is to anneal it. Heat it to a dull red and let it cool off slowly. Then I have to file it down to a taper again and retemper it. When they get real worn, we usually just forge them out and make smaller sizes out of them. When you're taking a heavy cut, you have to clean off the bits every inch or so. The borings are saved and used for flux. Occasionally, the barrel is cleaned and checked for straightness. Bends and crooks can be seen by sighting through it at the window. These can be hammered out on the anvil. All this is gauged by the eye. No straightening device is used. The barrel may be taken out of the machine 3 or 4 times to straighten and inspect for flaws. Flaws are cracks or pits inside the barrel. Like I said, the bits get larger in diameter and have a longer cutting surface. This helps bore out the crooks in the barrel. The longer bit will bore out a small crook that the shorter bit would have followed around.
The slight roughness left by the cutting bits is now removed by the finish boring with a square reamer. With this bit, the square corners do the cutting. A hickory backing piece is used to press the 2 cutting edges against the metal and to make the bit run